So today I want to talk about rejection. Now, rejection is something that we are always going to experience across our lifetimes. And it can be anything from romantic rejection through to not getting the job that we wanted, through to rejection from our children when they don't buy into our own personal belief system. So it's going to hit us at certain points in our lives. And the thing with rejection is it's always going to stimulate some sort of response. It's going to affect us emotionally, it's going to affect our thinking, and it's going to affect our behaviour. Now, interestingly, neuroscientists have identified that the area of the brain that is activated when we experience rejection is actually the same area that's activated when we experience a physical wound. So it's no wonder that it has a really deep impact on us. And actually this isn't by accident, because it's all to do with our primeval brain. Because when we were part of a prehistoric community and part of a tribe, the risk of being ostracized by our tribe and sent out into the wilderness alone meant it was very unlikely that we'd be able to survive. So we were meant to respond to the threat of rejection with real acute fear. So we've been designed this way to actually feel rejection very, very deeply and intensely. But that doesn't make it any better, and it doesn't make life any easier. So I wanted to share with you some coping strategies for when it is that we are feeling rejected, because the way that we are going to respond to rejection quite often involves a momentary sense of anger, of aggression. And we start to blame other people. It's their fault, it's their loss. And we can become quite aggressive in our behaviour. Conversely, or perhaps simultaneously, we can feel a real lowering of self-esteem. We start to feel very unworthy. We start to feel that actually it's our fault and actually we deserved that rejection. So a way of coping with this potential aggression or this real loss of self-esteem is by getting into a place of observing how you respond to rejection and starting to invite those fear moments where rejection might occur in such a way where you build up an immunity to how you deal with rejection. So I've been reading a book recently written by psychologist Harriet Lemire, and she's written a brilliant book, well, she wrote it 20 years ago, called Fear and Uninvited Guests. And she talks about building up this immunity to rejection by exposing ourselves healthily, by taking these healthy risks to obtain rejection until we get to the point where actually it doesn't hurt us anymore. So she tells a story of a client who was really keen to ask out a colleague on a date. Now, this really mattered to him. He'd been rejected by a wife who divorced him, and it was a really, really inflamed, sensitive area. And it took a lot of strength and courage for him to even think about wanting to ask this woman out. And he was too scared to do it. So he was seeking help from this psychotherapist. Now, she said to him that you are going to build up rejection immunity and I need to set you a task. You are going to go out this weekend and you are going to accumulate 65 rejections. So his motivation was high because this really mattered to him. So off he went on Saturday, went to a shopping centre, stood at the bottom of an escalator, and he started asking out random strange women, well, not strange women, strangers, and asking them on dates. And he was doing this all ostensibly, not creepily. By the time he had got to 12 rejections, he also had 5 acceptances. So he was starting to build a little bit of confidence and self-esteem. And he was also getting quite tired of accumulating the rejections. And so as he stood there thinking about asking another lady who was coming down the escalator, actually he decided it's going to be easier to just make the call and phone the colleague and ask her out. So he'd built up his rejection immunity, and actually in that instance she was already seeing someone and it didn't go any further, but one of the acceptees then became his girlfriend and they actually got married. So it just is evidence that you can build up resilience to the fear of rejection. So let's think how this can apply in our own lives. Now, my own personal experience has been a real sensitivity around rejection from male authority figures. And I'm sure it stems back to childhood chastisement from my father, who I respected, and I wanted his praise and adoration, and I became a people pleaser. And in my adult life, I have seen this manifest in my behaviour with different colleagues in different corporate scenarios, when I've been running my own businesses, trying to negotiate contracts or deals with senior, powerful males. I have become this quivering lesser me. Never with women, senior women I can build relationships with, I can negotiate comfortably with and have good relationships. But with male authority figures, I have always become this cowering version of myself, terrified of rejection. But what has happened over the years is I have exposed myself healthily again and again and again to speak my mind, to invite rejection in. And I noticed a bit of a eureka moment last week when I was on a very big call with lots of people, and I said something that irritated the particular male authority figure in this particular arena, and one of the businesses that I run. And what I said irritated him. He actually held the power, but he got very angry. I was, or could have been, very humiliated by his response in that environment. But because I have exposed myself to rejection from male authority figures repeatedly over my lifetime, and specifically over the past 2 decades, deliberately put myself in these sorts of scenarios, in this moment, I actually had to suppress a giggle. For the first time in my life, I suddenly realised I wasn't quivering and frightened and wanting to backtrack on what I had said. And I didn't end the call privately weeping into my pillow, feeling, oh, I'm less of a human than I was an hour prior. I actually giggled a little bit. And I felt quite comforted by the fact that I hadn't felt overtly shamed or humiliated. And I'd actually managed it in such a way where I stuck to the point that I was making. I retained eye contact and I felt like it went well. And this for me marks a real shift in my own personal growth. And interestingly, I got a call from that person later that evening wanting to apologise for his behaviour. So that again has bolstered self-esteem. So I want to invite you to really just expose yourself healthily to the rejections that might exist, that are holding you back. There'll be a fear of rejection somewhere that might be holding you back in a certain aspect of your life. So I'd love you to think about what that fear is, where that fear lies, and what you could do about healthily inviting in that potential rejection so that you can start to become immune to that fear of rejection and it no longer holds you back. Because you are a worthwhile human being and there is substance to you, and you should hold on to that self-esteem and know that there is always a place that you belong and you absolutely will find it. So please don't fear rejection. And I hope that's been useful.